Well, in a recent survey among Americans nationwide, these were the top 5 issues. Now, they may be issues for you and maybe not, but across Americans around our nation, these were the top 5 things that they are concerned with. Number 1 was the economy. Number 2 was threats to democracy. Number 3 was health care. Number 4 was crime and safety. And number 5 was immigration. I read an article by Suzanne Eller that speaks to this issue, and she shares some of her story. Susan Eller writes, "I was on my own at 17. I worked 2 jobs while attending a small community college and eventually left college because I ran out of funds. 3 years later, I married my husband. And over the next few years, babies were born with medical expenses incurred. Then I got sick, cancer. It probably won't surprise you that because of these circumstances, there was a huge need in my life for financial stability. I pinched pennies. I calculated paychecks to the last dime. I made lists of our debt month after month, figuring out how to pay them off quicker. I think financial gurus would say I was on the right track. But can I be honest? In the midst of my calculations and my overwhelming need for security, pinching pennies became not just a means to meet my goal and take care of our family, but it started to reflect my heart spiritually in the area of giving. Even after I was secure, even after our financial status was stable, we tithed, we gave to others, even sacrificially, but my heart wasn't in it. As I placed a tithing envelope in the offering, I thought, what about our savings? Shouldn't we be building it? What about buying something new for us? Our car is older. The miles are racking up. Friends would have been surprised at the battle that raged inside me. I was ashamed of it. They would have called me generous, but I knew the truth. I had worked so hard for such a long time that I had come to count on Susie. I obeyed God in this area, but I didn't trust Him. This is exactly where you and I need help with God. We need His help. That we don't just do the right things, but that we do the right things with the right motive. The Lord addresses this in one of the churches in the book of Revelation, where He says, you are doing all the right things. You hate the things I hate. You stand up for what is true, yet this one thing I have against you. You've left your first love. In other words, you've lost the right motivation to do the right things. You've become regimented, religious in doing them, but you have lost the why of doing them. I'm going to ask that you would take your Bible and turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 6. We want to allow the Holy Spirit to show us within ourselves where are we really in our relationship with Him. The psalmist said that the Spirit of God, search my heart and see if there be any wicked way in me. And the Spirit of God still does that for us today. Matthew chapter 6, we're going to begin reading in verse 19. Don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. Now, I remember growing up, my grandmother's house, the closets had the smell of mothballs. I don't know how much of that is around today with all of our modern synthetic fabrics. We're not usually worried too much anymore about moths coming in and eating our clothing, but certainly in this day, it was a concern. In this day, you could spend a lot of money on your clothing and you could put it in the closet or you could pack it away. And if you weren't careful, the moths could get in there and eat holes in it. That's what the Lord is saying here. We have a tendency to want to amass to ourselves things. Some of that is because, the story I read earlier, we have this need for a sense of security. As we move toward retirement age, some of you are already there, I'm moving toward it. And we begin to look at, will we really be able to retire the way we want to retire? It's one of the questions. You see it all around, and for some reason I've been getting these little clips on Facebook about, should you retire at 62 or 65 or 67 or 70? And I'm like, I'm already 62. Have I missed it? I don't think I've missed it yet. But we have this drive for security. We want to know that things will be taken care of. And this is the challenge the Lord continually puts toward us. What are you going to put your trust in? Are you going to put your trust in your finances? Are you going to put your trust in people? Or are we going to put our trust in Him? Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean it's wrong to plan. That doesn't mean it's wrong to have a financial strategy. But it certainly does cause us to make sure we examine our motivation. Store up your treasures in heaven where moths can't eat it, where rust can't destroy it. My older brother loved old muscle cars. He had several of them. And some of them came in pretty rough shape. He had a car, some of you will recognize it. It was a Plymouth Superbird. The pointed nose, the big tail wing, he had one of those. I actually got to drive it once. But when he bought that, it was rough. It needed to be restored. Rust had taken its toll on it. But he was able to restore it with my dad's help. My dad was actually the mechanic. But he was able to restore that, and it was a beautiful car. I just saw a thing yesterday where that car, that type of car, went to auction and was sold for $220,000. Now, my brother didn't get anything near that when he sold his car. In fact, he told me, he said he really regretted when he sold that for what he got for it. But rust can destroy even things we cherish on this earth. And then, of course, people can take what we have. Thieves can steal it. There's a company called Ministry Brands, and they've put together some statistics for 2025 church giving and tithing. Now, we know that there's been a trend over the past 5 years or so of less people attending church. That's not an uncommon thing. It is churches all across our country are dealing with this. Certainly we've experienced it here at First Assembly. And really, it's one of the reasons we need to get back to understanding, what has God called us to? God has not changed the purpose of His church. God has not changed the mission of His church. We are still called to make disciples of all nations. We are still called to be His witnesses. Now, with church attendance going down, of course, it impacts church giving. So this company, Ministry Brands, has found the following things out. When it comes to giving, 80% of all giving in churches comes from regular members. That should not be surprising. Those committed to regularly supporting a church with their attendance also support it with their financial giving. The next thing they found out is that giving is actually between 2 to 5% of their total income. What that means is even the people who are giving, not all of them are giving a tithe, that they are giving between 2 and 5% of their income. About 5% of members give the full 10% of a tithe. Now, I know there's varying reasons for this, and if you're like me, you've probably seen some of the questions that go online of, should we tithe, and is that a New Testament thing or an Old Testament thing? My personal thought on it is simply this. I think a tithe is the least I can give. It's the least I can give for what God has done for me. Of course, we'll deal with that in another sermon later on down the road. Now, some people think they can't afford to give 10%. I think that we need to do in light of God's promise to pour out a blessing. He says he still has that promise, even though it's in the Old Testament, that he would pour out a blessing on those who trust him in that area. In fact, it is still the only area where God has ever said, test me in it. Financial stewardship is always a test that shows our obedience and our trust in God. I can't remember who said it. He was a well-known speaker. But basically what he said was, you know God has really got a hold of someone's life when they open up their pocketbook. That's when you really know that their life has been changed. And Jesus gives us a tremendous amount of teaching concerning the use of money. There are both physical and spiritual aspects to how we handle it. And it really doesn't matter how much or how little you think you have. The principles of stewardship apply to everybody. As we read earlier, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves in light of what Jesus is saying here is this question: where is your treasure? Where is your treasure? Is it in the things of earth, or is it in that which is eternal? Now, there have been many popular books and movies and shows about treasure. As a young boy, I remember reading the book Treasure Island. Maybe some of you have read that story. I've watched shows like The Librarian, or National Treasure, or Pirates of the Caribbean. All of these deal with man's desire to find treasure. Many of them devoted their lives to pursuing these treasures that would make them rich or famous or both. And as exciting as it might be to watch stories like that, the question for you and me as followers of Jesus is still, where's my treasure? Really, the question is this: what are you giving your life to? What are you living your life for? What is causing you worry and anxiety? Jesus makes it very clear that your heart is going to be focused on what you treasure. If you treasure your relationship with God, your life will reflect that. If you know you're going to spend eternity with Him, you will make choices that have an eternal impact. If you place a high value on becoming more like Christ, you will go through this life yielding your will to His. So the point is that you really treasure what holds your heart captive. And what holds your heart captive will direct the course of your life. Let's take a moment and consider the story of Lot. Lot lived in a land that was wicked and far removed from living for God. Lot was given a choice. His uncle Abraham their herds had grown, their families had grown, and they had gotten too large to stay together. And so Abraham says to him, let's just agree. You can make a decision where you want to go. Look at the land before us. If you go that way, I'll go this way. And it says that Lot looked at the beautiful region, the fields for his flock. He chose what he thought was the best for himself, and he went that direction, and Abraham went the other. And as you look at this story, what we find is that as Lot moved toward the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he actually ended up living in the city. He had started out just wanting to have the pasture land and a place to camp for his family, but then we see he's actually moved into the city. They had chosen to live after their own desires. The city was fairly wealthy, yet they did not treasure God's ways. The result of this was actually leading them to experience God's judgment. And yet the Lord sent messengers to warn Lot and his family before judgment fell. Again, his uncle Abraham had a part in that. But God took notice of Lot. Lot did not belong there, but he was still there. Lot had allowed the ways of the world to draw him in. What was he treasuring? What was he living for? In the book of Genesis chapter 19, we're going to pick up in that story. Genesis 19, verse 15. Of course, there's much more to the story than what I've already shared, but you're welcome to read that on your own, you know. Genesis 19, verse 15. At dawn the next morning, the angels became insistent. Hurry, they said to Lot. Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Get out right now, or you will be swept away in the destruction of this city. When Lot still hesitated, the angel seized his hand and the hands of his wife and 2 daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city, for the Lord was merciful. When they were safely out of the city, one of the angels ordered, "Run for your lives and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away." Notice in this account the compassion of the Lord. Even in the midst of judgment, God gives them very clear direction. There is a way to be saved, but you've got to take it right now. There's no other way. You got to get out of this place. Verse 24. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them along with the other cities and villages of the plain, wiping out all the people and every bit of vegetation. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Understand that Lot's wife looking back was not just a glance to see what was happening. If you've ever been traveling and all of a sudden you're going down the highway and traffic is backed up, and you're wondering, what happened? Something must have happened because we're not moving. And finally, as you inch along, you come upon an accident scene, and of course, everybody had slowed down to look at the accident. We call them rubberneckers. But that was really the only reason for the slowdown. People wanted to see what was going on. Lot's wife was not just doing that. She was not just turning around to say, oh my goodness, look at what's being destroyed. I believe what it means here is when she looked back, it was not just a glance of what's happening. It was the longing of her heart. It was her city. It's where her treasure was. It's where her heart was. Even though she had received clear direction from God, even though His compassion had been shown to her to take her out of the city, in her heart she treasured her life in Sodom. Sometimes I look at the times in which we are living. I look at our nation who continues to move further and further away from God. I see a nation where people live for their own pleasure, where the things that we treasure are no longer godly but sinful. We have fast become a nation that calls evil good and good evil. And while I hope that there will be change, I know that this entire world is headed for God's judgment. He has told us it's going that way. Now, by no means do I consider myself a doom and gloom preacher or an alarmist, but I can read what God says. And I need to be able to discern the times in which we live according to God's word. In fact, the Lord tells us, all of us should be able to recognize the signs and discern the times in which we are living. I don't know God's timetable, but I know He doesn't lie. There will be judgment on this world that will usher in the fulfillment of the prophecies concerning the end time. It will happen. Let's turn to the book of Luke, chapter 17, verse 26. We're going to get a taste of what the Lord has to say about this. Luke 17, verse 26. When the Son of Man returns, you know He's coming back, right? He's coming back. When He returns, it's not a will He ever return? No, He is going to return. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days, the people enjoyed banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat and the flood came and destroyed them all. And the world will be as it was in the days of Lot. People went about their daily business, eating and drinking, buying and selling, farming and building, until the morning Lot left Sodom. Then fire and burning sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. Yes, it will be business as usual right up to the day when the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, a person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return home. Remember what happened to Lot's wife? If you cling to your life, you will lose it. And if you let your life go, you will save it. One of the hard things to understand, because we are so driven for security and stability. And God says the one who's trying to save their life, the one who's trying to live for the things of this world, the one who's trying to get security to themselves without considering the things of God, in the end they will lose their life. But the one who has the awareness that they lose their life now, they yield their will, they die daily, they take up their cross each day and follow Jesus, they walk in obedience and trust in the Lord. For those who do that, they will actually save their life. Now, when we read things about the end times and the judgment that's coming, God doesn't tell us such things so we will build bomb shelters and live in fear of the big one. It's not what he's telling us to do. He tells us these things so we will not be ignorant of what is happening, and so that we will keep eternity in focus, not only for ourselves, but for the people around us. You see, if your treasure is found in what you can earn, or what you can build, or what you can get in this life here on earth, your focus of life is going to show that. Even though in God's compassion, He's offering you salvation from what is to come. But if your heart is with the Lord, you will treasure the things that are eternal. You will lay up for yourself treasure in heaven. You will make choices that lead you to make disciples of all nations. You will teach others about the ways of God. You will follow the direction of the Lord in what to do and where to go and how to live. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says that God has placed eternity into the heart of man. We didn't just come up with this on our own. God has created us with this awareness. There's something more. There's something beyond us. There is an aspect of why we live this life and what is yet to come. Now, God is not saying that you having a place to live is not important to Him. He's not saying providing for the needs of your family isn't important. In fact, He tells us that the one who does not provide for his family is worse than an unbeliever. So yes, we need to provide for our family. Yes, we need to live in this world, but not of it. And Jesus says, God knows what you have need of. He knows what you need. And the promise is this: if we seek Him first and His kingdom, all the things we are going to need, He's going to provide for us. This is where the trust comes in. This is where the obedience comes in. This is the coupling, the coming together of obedience and trust. God, I will be obedient to you, and I will trust you're going to take care of me. I will be concerned about the things that concern you, because I believe in the end you are still going to be faithful to me. I can look at what I give financially, and I'm not worried about it, because you are the one who's provided it for me. And you're the one that's called me to be a faithful manager of what you've given to me. So I will do that, even though the people in the world think it's foolish. Because I trust you, God. God says, if you love me with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you love your neighbor as yourself, then I will take care of all you need. So where's your treasure? Is your treasure in your IRA, your 401k? I'm not saying those are wrong. As I said, that's part of planning. But the Lord tells us that we're not to put our trust in the horses and chariots. We're not to put our trust in the physical things. Ultimately, we trust the Lord. The story of the man who was so successful in business. He says, harvest has come, and it was even bigger than he thought. And he's like, look at all the excess I have. What am I going to do with all this? And he said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll build bigger barns to hold all of my increase. And then I will be set to live in ease for many years. And in that story, Jesus calls the man a fool, because that night his soul would be required. That night, the eternal would happen. And that is the challenge for us, that we do not keep our eyes on the things of this world. We do not trust in things that can be quickly taken away. We do not trust in that which does not have an eternal aspect to it. But that we live with an awareness that, hey, there's something beyond. Again, we try to plan for retirement. Will retirement 20 years? Will we live 20 years after we retire? How much longer is eternity going to be than that? So Jesus says, hey, get your focus on the right things. Yes, do we need money to live in this world? Yes, we do. Do we need a house or an apartment to live in? Yes, we do. The Lord knows it. He's promised to meet our needs. We are responsible to put our trust in Him. Let Him lead. Let Him direct. Let Him provide. Let Him open the doors. Let Him close the doors. He knows what He has for you. So where's your treasure? Well, God has placed you to live in this world. Don't allow the things of earth to be what you're living for. Understand there's an eternity that will follow this life. Live, make your choices and decisions with eternity in your heart.